Got another question from one of our viewers. Did you experience racism in prison? Well, racism in prison isn't necessarily what you would think as far as somebody calling you N-word or, you know, it's being like, it's more subtle. It might be to the point where you go inside a particular unit and a certain area of that unit, a certain number of cells are designated for black inmates. And then you go to another part of that unit or tier and a certain number of cells are designated for Hispanic inmates. And then you go to another part of that tier and a certain number is designated for, say, white inmates, or or you have maybe Puerto Rican inmates or Asian inmates. And what happens is these particular cells, when an Asian or a white person or a black person moves out, a person of that same race moves in there. And that's how they keep the balance of power. And a lot of times this has been going on for years, and it's unsaid. Nobody has to tell you that, hey, that's a white cell or that's a black cell. You know by whoever was living in there before that that cell was designated to a black inmate or to a Hispanic inmate or to an Asian inmate or to a white inmate. And basically, as an inmate, you know that you can't go move into an Hispanic inmate cell when you're a black guy or you're a white guy. It's just common sense. You kind of pay attention to what's going on around you, and you realize that, hey, that's not a cell that I can move into once it becomes vacant. And that's one of the ways that racism is basically displayed in prison. Another way is going to the chow hall to eat. You have an area when you walk in that might be the area where the white guys sit. You have another area that might be where the Crips sit. You have another area that might be where the Bloods sit, or where the Serranos sit, or where the Norteños sit, or where the Latin Kings or GDs or whoever you sit at, or DC or whoever, East Coast, Bay Area. You have all these different areas, and you got to know where you can and can't sit. If you go and sit at a table and it's designated for the Latin Kings, you're going to get your wig split, because you should have known that you're not supposed to sit there, and that seat probably belongs to somebody. Or if you go sit where the Bloods sit and you're not a Blood, you're going to get your wig split. And it's the same thing. You don't go sit where, say, the Serranos sit and you're not a Serrano, or where the Paisas sit and you're not a Paisa. So you got to know these different things. Somebody's supposed to put you up on game when you walk into a chow hall where you're supposed to sit, because it's not like a regular restaurant on the street where you can go and just sit down where you please. There's designated areas where you can and can't sit. Another way racism is displayed is, you have certain guards that favor certain races. So say, a guard is cool with a particular race, he might sneak that particular race in certain things, or he might look out for that particular race, maybe with clothing in say the laundry room, or bedding in the laundry room, or if he's cool with a certain race, somebody might need copies. He might look out for copies for a certain race more than the other. So there's a lot of subtle things that aren't said, but you kind of know who favors who, and that's how racism is perpetuated in prison, through not necessarily blatant acts, but a lot of times it's real subtle. Me, I socialized. I had Asian homeboys, I had Hispanic homeboys, I had white homeboys I worked out with on the yard, and I had a little bit of everybody. I had homies that were Latin Kings. I knew dudes, I knew people from every race. And so because I worked in a law library, I was able to basically go beyond the race issue, but racism is definitely prevalent in prison.